Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Factory Must Grow, episode 42. Joining us on the line today is Galdoc. Galdoc, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Things are well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, actually. I found a job, and it's been enjoyable to kind of sink my time into something.
Woo.
But,
Excellent.
also being more busy sometimes comes with some downsides, but overall, it's been great. Also, episode 42, a special episode, the meaning of life, the universe, and everything is going to be shared today on this podcast.
Yeah, but the problem is the question was, what was 9 times 6?
Oh,
I think
well,
that's what the
dang.
question was.
Dang.
I probably have the numbers wrong.
But all that to say, today's episode, we're going to be diving into what's next for Factorio and some hopes and dreams for the future of Factorio and a little bit of speculative talk. We've talked a lot about what Factorio is, but we have not talked a ton about what is to be. We did do a lot of episodes focused on what is to be back in the FFF phase before Space Age.
Yes.
But it's been almost a year since Space Age came out. So I thought it was time to kind of talk about the future again, since it's been a while since we've heard anything from Wooba, and it's a good time to kind of get into some speculation. But first, I want to thank the show's patrons. As always, this show is possible because of you, the listeners. If you'd like to support the podcast, head over to patreon.com/Krydax. And you can also join the Discord, and there is the Factory Must Grow channel in the Krydania Discord where you can chat with me. You can also ping Galdoc. Galdoc also has his Discord, which you can join, and there are links to all of that in the description. Today's mod spot.
But I never say anything about it.
What's that?
I also have a Patreon, but I never actually say much about it.
Yeah, if you'd like to support Galdoc directly, you can head over to his Patreon as well. I believe there's a link to that in the show notes. I'll double check that. Okay. And today's mod spotlight is one that I thought was really interesting, and I'm actually going to do a little bit of a double mod spotlight because I meant to replace this one with one I discovered yesterday. However, the one I was originally planning to spotlight today, I will still spotlight, which is called Heat Visualizer. This is by just a random geek who's also the maker of Nixie Tubes and the push button mods, which are quite popular. And it was released only 8 days ago, so it's quite new, and only 211 downloads. So Heat Visualizer is kind of exactly what it sounds like it does on the tin. It is a dead simple mod. It doesn't even have a description yet on the mod portal. It's that brand new. But basically all it does is it has an overlay, you turn it on, and it has a heat map of your heat pipes. So you can look at your heat pipes and see blue colors where they're colder and red colors where they're warmer and the whole spectrum in between. And I think that's super useful on places like Aquilo, where you're trying to figure out like, okay, I've got my nuclear reactors over here. They're powering this heat pipe. How much heat is actually getting there? And this way you can kind of see what it looks like without needing to mouse over every single heat pipe in different parts of your base and trying to visualize in your head where the cold spots were versus where the hot spots were. And like if you have two heat sources on the same network, like is the heat getting all the way to the middle? Those sorts of things. It just visualizes the whole thing at once. And so it'll be really easy to find cold spots. Or if you're looking for places where you want to pull a lot of the heat out, you'd want to put them in hot spots, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a pretty cool mod. I think it's actually one that in my mind like could fit in vanilla if they had found an elegant way to do it that wasn't obtrusive. It seems like a really good idea.
Yeah, and I'm someone in the Twitch chat is mentioning that blue is hotter than red, and there's a part of me too. I just want to like point out the elephant in the room that's shaped like physics. It's called black body radiation, and as you warm something up, it will gradually begin to emit light. And yes, some things will ignite before then, but if you're talking about like copper, it'll just glow, and eventually it will melt. So I understand there's a part of me too that's like, man, I wish I could change the color palette so that it'll match what it actually is. But at the same time,
but if you're thinking about warm versus cool colors, like in color theory, red is hot and blue is cold, and this is just color we're looking at. It's not like you're seeing the heat.
I know. This is just some part of me. No, it's if I'm not mistaken, it's like the blue, the green, yellow, orange, red, or something like that. I guess I haven't actually used the mod, but that's from what you've described. Is what it sounds like. But no, and this is meant for a visualization purpose.
Right.
Like it's not obviously attempting to capture a physical phenomenon.
Now, what would be cool is if the heat pipes themselves in the game actually gave off a spectrum of colors depending on how hot they were, from 0 to 1,000 degrees Celsius.
I think they do have a glowing.
They do have a glow effect that gets stronger. Yes, so but I mean actual color shift.
Yeah, right.
That would be
Yeah,
cool.
that would be
Anyway,
the
that's a
I
totally
get what
different
you're saying.
topic.
I want
Okay,
it to be
so
so bad that the copper melts and like flows away. No.
or I saw a comic on the Factorio subreddit about someone was like, "Oh, did you get the molten iron set up?" And they were like, "Yeah, it's in the iron pipes over there." And they were like, "Molten iron in iron
Yeah.
pipes?"
Oh yeah. Oh, that was I railed about that when I was doing my first playthrough and I got to
Yeah.
Vulcanist. And okay, you know what's funny actually saying that? I didn't know you could use offshore pumps in lava because a part of my brain said that wouldn't work that way.
Yeah,
They wouldn't do that.
I had the exact same issue. I was like, "Oh, wait, where's my where's my lava pump?" Like I
Exactly. That's
assumed I would get a
exactly what I
special
did.
lava pump because what the heck is an offshore pump designed for water doing in a pool of lava?
It doesn't make any sense.
even visually the graphics don't make it look like an object that could survive
Mm-mm.
lava.
No, they don't.
Yeah,
And it
I'm
would
with you.
immediately melt.
That one kind of bothered
So
me. From a gameplay perspective, I think it makes some sense to not add a whole nother entity, but it did feel a bit odd.
and there actually is, if you look at the what's the tips and tricks thing where they show you how to do the stuff, you go to Vulcanist, they actually have a picture of a lot of the stuff you'll need, and like in the corner there's the actual offshore pump
Hmm.
working away that you could just see, and that's, I think eventually someone pointed that out to me. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. I didn't
Okay,
read
so
the
the
name, but
second mod I'm highlighting, and this one's even more dead simple. This is one made by Code Green, according to him, in like half an hour. He said it took him longer to make the art for the mod than the mod itself. But what it does is it hides the border in remote view so that you get all your
nice,
pixels back.
nice.
It also hides the buttons in the search bar in the top right, so you need to hit Control F if you want. You can still search, and it'll still be typing in the search bar, but it's like hidden off screen. It basically expands the remote view to be bigger than your monitor, so it's all hidden out of the margin. But you get all those pixels back, which is really nice.
He had made a mod earlier that was essentially the same thing. It just was all the time. It's a key. It was for screenshots, so you could like press the key binding, and then all your GUI goes away. So, yeah,
Oh
there
yeah,
probably was a quick,
I need that
quick.
one too. But anyway, it's called No More Remote View, or I actually don't have the name of it written down. It's something like that. Anyway, super nice.
Yeah,
So, moving on to our main topic for today, which is the future of Factorio. Factorio came out. It was in November or October. Factorio.
it was
Factorio
October
Space
20
Age.
something. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was October
Space
20
Age
something. But we're almost
came
there.
out just about a year ago,
24.
almost exactly a year ago.
Yeah,
And we still don't have 2.1. What do you think about that?
I think that immediately after it released, they went through a flurry of bug fixes because it's not like, I want people to really hear this when I say this, but when you play like AAA games that have like multi-gigabyte day one patches, just to make it function, not to make it better, but to make it function at all, that's what I consider to be something shipping in a broken state. Wooba did not do that. Nonetheless, once they shipped it, a number of issues that they hadn't foreseen did crop up, and there was a cycle where they were fixing bugs and essentially taking a fairly stable experience and making it really, really stable. Their ethos is no bug is okay. And they will chop features off in order to have no bugs sometimes. I think it's a bit much, but whatever. Then they took a little bit of a break from what I'm to understand. And that's me sort of looking at the things people say rather than having like an official, I have knowledge. But it seems to me that a lot of people took a break, including um, Kovarex himself. And, I think that makes sense. But they have been in the recent months hard at work on 2.1, just listening again to what people kind of say and reading between the lines a little bit. But as far as what, you know, is this acceptable? I think, of course, right? They have to be able to say, we need to take a step back, see what people are doing, what is the community doing with the tools we've got. And to be fair, they also have been putting in upgrades. They've been putting in a lot of stuff that people have been asking for. Actually, it was I don't want to name any of the devs, but there's a dev that basically had been fixing bugs, and then when they ran out of bugs, started working on things that people wanted and added some which I can't remember the name of the feature, but it dealt with quality. They added some things that quality could influence. And not only did they do that, they made a post and said, if you want quality to influence a statistic on a particular type of entity, let me know in the forum.
Yeah,
And I
for
did.
mod support.
And I did. And you know what? He put it in. It was a
Yeah.
minor radius. So there was a minor radius thing that I said, you know what, it would be cool if quality could impact minor radius, and now it can.
Yeah.
So if a modder wants to put that in there, they can. So they have been putting in a whole bunch of stuff, but
Well, and they
there's a bit of
also added the ability on decider combinators to output a specific amount of a signal when it's true, rather than just one of that signal. That's
I didn't know that.
huge. Oh, you didn't know
Okay.
that? Oh my gosh,
Nope.
yeah. They did that about a month ago, maybe a month and a half, roughly, and that has revolutionized circuitry, because now you can make RS latches with a single decider combinator now,
That's
because
nice.
it can,
Yeah.
if you're going, like, let's say you pump out when it's at 10,000 oil and then you stop when it gets down to 2,000 oil. Well, now what you can do is when it gets to 10,000 oil, you can output 8,000 oil to itself, and then it'll start pumping out
Right.
until it gets down to what it thinks is 10,000, which is really 2,000, because it was adding its own 8,000, and then it stops, and it's like single RS latch stuff is awesome.
Nice. That's awesome.
They also added the ability to wire up splitters just like 2 weeks ago or something, which I haven't even tried yet. I forgot that they did that until I just said that just now. It's been in the game for like 2 weeks, and I haven't done it in Pyanodons yet, which is crazy. Like, wiring up splitters is huge for what's possible.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, so coming back to what you had asked a moment ago about the 2.1 thing. So I worked on a Doom mod with the team for a while. And
Project
I came on to
Brutality. It's amazing.
yeah,
Highly recommend.
it is. It's going. It's something I haven't worked on in a long time. I'm still like present in the community. I know some of the people still, but by and large, I've moved on. That being said, there was a pall that hung over them for the longest time, and that was because they had an official release. I think it was 2 point something. I can't remember the last two digits, but it was 2 point something, and they wanted to release 3.0. But it got, I don't say development hell, it's a mod fundamentally. Like, so they kept, they said, this is what we want to do. But then as we would make this stuff, they would add more things. And the goalpost kept getting further and further away. And
Yep.
3.0 kept getting further and further away. And at some point, it was just like, you know what, whatever, this is 3.0 or nothing at all. Who cares? Just play the mod and, down versioning. And I'm still not sure where they've come down on that, but I can say that it can be a bit of a spooky thing to say we're going to put a big number on a version, and then have the goalposts shift around on it. And I have
sure.
a stinking suspicion that 2.1 is suffering from a little bit of that. So like when it does drop, a part of me suspects that we're going to see that we've actually gotten chunks of 2.1, air quotes for those who can't see. We've gotten chunks of 2.1 over the course of the past year, right? And
because there were things that could be released before 2.1. Right. Yeah,
precisely. So now, is that true? I'm not sure. I don't have any insider information, but I can tell you that's somewhat what I'm suspecting.
Yeah, I've got all sorts of theories. I want to hit on, I'm kind of going out of order here, but I want to talk about 2.2 real quick, because I think part of why 2.1 isn't out is they're not going to do a 2.2. Because one of my questions in the show notes is, do you think they're going to do a 2.2? And I think given how long it's taken for 2.1, I think what they're doing, kind of like you were just talking about, the goalposts keep moving because this is their last patch. This is their final state of the game, apart from bug fixes and extremely minor features that someone like might be able to add, kind of like the ones we've gotten so far since 2.0. Like, if they're that simple, they might add a couple other tiny things after 2.1. But I don't think there's ever going to be a 2.2 for Factorio Space Age.
I think as of right now, you're correct. That's my read of it. I don't want to predict there's not going to be it, but I can say that from what I'm to understand, they sort of intend for 2.1 to be the final. But
because their official statements back when, and I mean, my knowledge might be out of date, they might have said more on this since what I've heard, but back around when Space Age was releasing, right after it released, there was that beta area that you and I were both privy to, that we could see like more stuff, that devs were a little bit more open there about things than they, would be on Reddit or somewhat. And I do remember they said, we don't have 2.2 like planned, but there's definitely a possibility of it. It wasn't like it was
Oh,
off the
sure.
table and they were saying we're planning to get everything in 2.1, but they were like, yeah, 2.2 potentially if 2.1 doesn't hit on everything. But given how long it's been, my theory is that like 2.2 is just off the table at this point and they're trying to get it all perfect. And that also means, making sure that those features are balanced properly so they don't have base breaking changes that come out. Because I think there's going to be balance changes in 2.1 that actually are potentially maybe not base breaking, but like your ratio breaking type stuff.
Sure, sure.
So I think
Yeah,
those kinds of changes are coming.
yeah, and I don't know if I have any idea of where, especially considering I don't even know a single feature that they had said would be 2.2 and not 2.1. I'm not sure exactly how that would
Yeah,
break
they
down.
never, well, like I said, they never had anything slated for 2.2 because it was never officially like, oh, we're
Right.
planning on 2.1 and then 2.2. I just know that some of the devs had mentioned a 2.2 could be possible after 2.1 if
Right.
they still have more stuff to fit in. But I think that theory was more reasonable when the idea was that 2.1 might come out after a few months, not a year.
Sure. Yeah.
So let's talk
But
about
yeah,
our wish
and
list for 2.1 a little bit
yeah,
since it's not out yet.
this is unofficial. We're not saying anything that is going to be released, and we are not making any expectations, just so that's clear. But at the same time, you know, if we're gonna speculate, let's free associate hard. Let's do this
Yeah,
right.
well, exactly. I mean, if we're dreaming, why not dream, right? That's
Yeah,
part of the
dream
point of
big,
this episode. So,
dream bigger, darling.
and we
What's
do
this?
know, I think there's a couple things they've confirmed are going to be in 2.1. I don't remember what they all are because I haven't talked about these things with or heard from the devs about these things for like a year. These were things that like originally it's like, oh, that will be in 2.1.
Hmm.
I do know one thing that a lot of people were asking for 2.1, and I think didn't we even talk about this in the last episode? I think we did. Was discernible colors on assemblers for the wiring.
Yes, I wanted to come up
Um,
with a mod for that, and then I never
yeah,
went through
so
it. So
I'm
yeah,
pretty sure
that's
that
fine.
is on everybody's wish list, and I would be very surprised if they didn't add it because of it. People were asking for this before 2.0 even released, like back when they were beta testing, and there were a bunch of us in the beta. Like people were already asking for it. It was already a big topic.
It would
So
be possible, but I think it would be a little hard. I just don't know. Like there's a sort of running joke where Resetting will say we're never going to do a thing, and then the thing happens. But
yeah,
there's plenty of instances that's counting the hits, not the misses, of things where he said we're not going to do that thing, and then we still don't.
yeah, I'm
So
I'm guessing that that feature will be in 2.1 though. I'd
I'd love it.
be
It'd
I'd
be
be
great.
disappointed if it's not. Like it's high enough on my list that I actually am kind of leaning on it being in the game in the future. There's so much that you just can't do because of not being
Sure.
able to switch. This is outputting on red, this is outputting on green because there's so many checkboxes in the assembler, right?
Yeah.
You can read the contents, you can check whether you're also reading the in progress contents, you can read the ingredients, you can read the crafting state. And so there's
Yeah.
so many signals that you can get out and you cannot differentiate them at all on one color of wire. And so I think it's a feature that's not just what everybody wants, but it's a reasonable ask. Like it's like, oh, you've given us tools, but not the right way. It's like you've given us hammers without handles almost. It's like, like it's almost
Sure.
there.
Sure. I mean, the fundamental truth is, and this is something that it took me a while to grapple with, is that everything that can pass through signals in a sense is in its own right an actual combinator. Like this is a perspective that helped me try to build something when I was on
Yeah,
Gleba.
an assembler
Um,
combinator.
it, and it is a combinator. It takes a signal, it does something, and then outputs a signal. And it's not I don't like thinking of it that way when I'm building assemblers, but I do like thinking about it that way when I'm building circuit networks. And the UI for the combinators is sharp, refined, it's efficient, it's tight, has a little bit of wasted space that I'll complain about someday if I ever get in a UI kick. But the point is that it's very good for what it does. And in the areas where it needs to shine, it shines very brightly. And it would be nice if the other things that also acted, not just assemblers or crafting machines writ large, but all the other things that take a signal, do something to it, and then send out a signal could also get a sort of UI overhaul that would
Yep.
add in the kind of functionality you're looking for.
Well, yeah, I've
Um,
actually hoped for the exact same feature on inserters because you can set their
mhm,
filters and read their hand contents. But if they're all wired to each other, then if one of them is holding something, it's going to set all the other ones to that filter. And you might not want that.
yeah.
You might want the
Mhm.
filter to be set and reading what they're holding to be two separate outputs. And that's currently impossible. And then you're mixing inputs and outputs. And so that's another thing where, like, having the red and green on the inserter combinator, as you might call it, would be very nice. And since we're talking about combinators, also on my wish list is two major improvements for combinators themselves. One of them is on deciders, being able to group your ors together, your ands and your ors, grouping them
Mhm.
with
Sure.
nested parentheses the way that you'd like. Even if we only get one or two levels of nesting maximum just because of GUI issues or whatever, I'd still take that in a heartbeat. Because right
Mm.
now you can and you can or your ands, but you can't and your ors. Or I'm saying it backwards potentially, but there you can only do one of those two things. And so if
You
you
can there's a
need,
workaround, but yes, yes, I know what you're saying.
well, there's not a when you say workaround, it's adding the same condition 15 times. If you need this and this, or this and this, or this and this, you have to add the anded thing 15
I know what
times.
you mean. Yeah, yeah.
And it'd be much nicer to have a big parenthesis full of all your ors and this one thing that always has to be true. And it would
So,
save you copying the same thing 15 times and a lot of visual
yeah.
clutter, and it'd just be a lot nicer. You're right that in terms of the actual, like, De Morgan's laws stuff, like, yeah, you can make the same truth table without
De
it.
Morgan's Law. Wow, that's the yeah, no, wow, I haven't heard that in a long time.
I haven't either. I
Just
just pulled
it's
that from the deepest cobwebs of my brain, college
it's
computer science class.
and parenthesis or is the same as or parenthesis and or something like this. I'd have to like write down the truth table that goes
Yeah, yeah.
along with it. But
The
it's one of
point
those things
is, you're
where
right
yeah,
that there's technically a workaround. It's not that we could functionally do different things, but graphically it's very different, and the amount of work we have to put into it's very different.
if you don't know De Morgan's Law, please look it up on Wikipedia. Like right now, take 2 seconds, pause the thing
Or
because it's worthy of
don't.
knowing.
It's
Or don't. I know. This is the math teacher in me that's like,
yeah,
hey,
yeah,
okay, all right.
exactly. Or don't if you don't
Um,
care. But all that to say, that's
let
feature
me
one.
yeah,
That's
look, can I reply to that real quick?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
like
Please do.
I've been in the situation where I have tried to code a new combinator entirely, and I spent a couple of streams doing this. And right now, Sir Puck or Puke, he has made a mod called peer to peer (P2P), or platform to platform, I think is what it's technically called, but it's called P2P in the thing just to sort of hearken to peer to peer. But the idea is you can send goods in between different platforms. And so when I went to help him with this, because I did the art and I did some of the coding of my own implementation of a chunk of it, um, I started running into some really interesting problems. It's very easy to sort of hand wave it away and say, we should just be able to do this with combinators. But there's a couple of things that crop up that you might not realize until you're sitting there in the design chair having to make something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And those challenges tend to look like, okay, well, you want to have a minimum number of combinators that are maximally expressive and yet can still get away with everything that you would need to do. I mean, to
Right.
a certain extent, we only need NAND, right? If we have NAND, like your processor is built from NAND. But this gets obnoxious. Like this is not a thing that I think that we should uh, want per se. So it doesn't have to be like super duper minimal. But if you were talking about Factorio, they actually have a really good minimal set of like Legos that you would call them, basic
Uh-huh.
building blocks that you could make very expressive structures with. And this principle echoes throughout the entire gameplay. The way they design their belts and how you have a belt, an underground, a splitter, and technically the black sheep of the family, the loader, whatever. But the point is that you have a minimum amount of these particular types of tools in order to get things done, and you're able to do stuff with it. When it comes to making a new combinator, you end up in the situation of, okay, let me build a piece of functionality on this combinator, right? But wait a second, I don't need to technically because I can do that same functionality on a separate combinator and just pass a signal in that's been processed in whatever way I'm thinking about. That problem right there turns out to be enormous. And it leads you to say, okay, what is the exact set of assumptions that I need to have in order to make this combinator a thing that is easily understood by a player that's already facing a pretty steep learning curve and will still allow them to be expressive maximally with a minimum number of assumptions. So finding that correct amount of assumptions, in my case, it was, what does this combinator do with a platform? How does it interact with it? I was trying to have something that you would send it signals and it would create um, job tasks where it would fire goods from one platform to the other, or the coin being flipped the other way, receive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So coming up with a base set of assumptions for that, I think is a very, very good example of why it's not so easy to make some of these decisions with combinators. And it's
Totally.
not something that's at all obvious.
I think in
Um,
this case, though, for this particular feature that I'm talking about, it's more of a GUI, UI, UX, like how do we actually make it clean for the
mhm,
player? Because in this case, it's a no-brainer. First of all, a lot of other games do support logic where you can parenthesize the things the way you want them.
mhm.
And in Factorio, you can't, right? It forces your ands and ors to be linked in the way that it says rather than the way you'd prefer. And I actually think that makes things harder for players, not easier. Harder for new players specifically. It's only advanced players that actually even know that logically you can accomplish the same thing with De Morgan's laws, and you can do this or this and this or like a new player
Mhm.
is actually needing those parentheses that they design to be able to accomplish their tasks. And I would even argue it's cleaner the way the new player wants to do it, to have a big parenthesis of 15
Yeah,
ors ended with a single condition is way cleaner than 15 pairs of things where one of the things is the same in every pair. So it's cleaner for new players, it's more understandable for new players, and I think it's a quality of life feature that most people want. Now, whether it's easy to add from a code, like I'm only talking from the user perspective here. From the design
sure.
perspective, it may be difficult to add or impossible to add or too much dev time to add or they
Sure.
don't care to add it, whatever. But from the user perspective, I think it's a
Sure.
no-brainer for this
Especially if
particular
you're
feature.
especially if you're making a game like Undertale, which had it was renowned for having a gargantuan case switch statement.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, as like that fun that basically was the spine of the entire game was one giant switch statement.
That's
Anyways,
funny. Yeah, so all
um,
that to say
yeah,
that that's a feature that I'm really hoping is in 2.1 as well. A lot of people have been asking for it. I mean, I see a post on the Reddit about that exact issue
yeah,
probably once a month at least.
and it
Um,
held me up. Like it really did hold. Like I never did. I just mentioned that I used this trying to solve Gleba. I didn't. It held me up. I couldn't solve it, and
yeah.
eventually, it's not the thing that killed the playthrough, but it was the straw that broke the camel's back, as it were.
Are you
So
talking about the and or thing or the wire color
the fact
thing?
that the wire color thing.
Oh,
So
okay, okay.
sorry, I jumped topic a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was the fact that I was trying to get. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So then the third thing for combinators that I would really like would be an improvement to arithmetic combinators, basically giving them the same treatment that decider combinators were given, because you only get two boxes now, and with arithmetic you could be like you could keep adding more operators, right? Like, oh,
mhm,
this plus this minus that, right? Like giving us more than just two and one operator. And again, you get into the weeds on like how many should you add? How should that be displayed graphically? What's the order of should we trust the player to know the
sure.
order of operations or do we force it? Whatever it is, just some improvement to the arithmetic so it can do more than just X operator Y would be really nice, because at this point there's a lot of decider combinator stuff that's more powerful than arithmetic, and sometimes you can actually do what you need to do with a decider instead of an arithmetic because of how much better they are now.
Sure. And what I was going to say is there is precedent. I don't know how effectively that precedent could be brought to bear in this particular case, but consider for a moment in parameterization, you can actually just type in a formula. Um, is that possible? Could we have a thing where you literally have one of the options be type in a formula and then you get like a variable thing where, you say what the variable X is going to be and whatever. I think that would be dope. I don't know if it'll happen. But I like you can already do it in the engine at all. So
Sure,
could it happen here
sure.
too?
I think that would be an advanced feature because parameterization is already talking about black sheep. That's the black sheep. It's hidden away from the player. Like only people who really want this will find it. And I think having a text box where you write a formula is going to turn off a lot of people. Combinators are already really tricky. And so I like the simplicity of an arithmetic, having box operator box. And it's like, okay, this icon plus this icon, done. Which icon do I output? That's great. But that being said, no ability to expand on that is pretty limiting. And often I find myself needing to chain together 2 or 3 arithmetic combinators for a very simple mathy task where it's like, I want this times 30 and then minus that, and we're done. But I need 2 combinators. And it'd be nice if they were given a treatment like deciders where we can just do that all in one.
Sure. Oh, and just to be clear, what I was saying wasn't replace the binary operators as they are now. It was to have like an option that you could click on, and if you did, then you were given the ability to
Gotcha.
That's
Yeah,
all.
I mean, I'm all for that too. I wonder though if we expanded them in the way that I'm talking about, you could make a formula through parameterization if it had more boxes as well.
So I can tell you from the standpoint of a Blender user who works in nodes, I can tell you that it sucks. And the reason it sucks is because you have something super duper simple that you, armed with a calculator, could poke buttons with your nose on. It was so easy. And you can get the calculation that you want, and everyone knows how to use a basic 4-function calculator. And, if if you're playing Factorio and you can't, well, then I have a new skill for you to learn. But the point is that, like, it shouldn't be, like, so difficult that people can't do it, and it's something that I've wanted in Blender for a long time. You can't type out. There are some places where you can type out expressions, but if you're doing a node group, it is a very, very difficult to access thing in order to do it, because typically what you end up doing is just chaining a whole bunch of nodes. This is the add node, this is the subtract node, this one's the multiply node, and you combine these things in this great big. It's unwieldy, unintuitive, and though possible, far more difficult than just being like x plus 2 parenthesis time, whatever, simple.
No, I'm with you. Typing that in would be great. I just, knowing what I know about Factorio devs, that one feels like a stretch that I doubt they'd ever add. Whereas what I'm talking about with the arithmetic combinators being a bit more advanced, I could see them adding that. But as far as whether I want it, I'm right there with you. I'd love that. That'd be great if we're just dreaming.
That's what I really want.
Now, on to kind of that tangent of parameterization. Let's talk about our wish list for parameterization, because that feature, I think everyone can agree, was pretty underbaked to Factorio standards.
It's so good.
It's so good.
So good.
But it could be so much better.
It needs to be fixed. It needs to have
the bugs need to be fixed.
The bugs, just please, don't show it red when it's not broken.
It's so bad. The bug has been in the game for like 6 months.
Yes, it's to be fair, I can give them forbearance on it because I kind of get the sense that a lot of people there, and I'm again speaking out of turn, I'm not talking for anybody, but like I get a sense a lot of people there are kind of like, this thing is a lot of work for not a lot of payoff, and that ratio has kept people from wanting to do it and has also given it sort of a perception about it being poopy.
Yeah, I think a lot of the devs are like, I wish we hadn't added parameterization. That being said, though, you and I are very much of the opinion that, like, and Dang Wiggums, who was on last week, like, you can't play the game the way we want to play it without parameterization. Like, it is necessary for the game.
I just stopped hearing you in Discord.
Uh-oh. I believe Twitch, I believe I'm still live. But, like, you can't play the game that we want to play without parameterization. And so, as much as it may be a little bit of a black sheep from the dev perspective, like, they are catering with parameterization, they're catering to maybe a smaller niche crowd, but it's like, those are your core players that play the game for 3,000 hours. And I think it was the right choice that they added it. It is a massive boon for mega basers and ability to do things that you just couldn't do without it, and save so much time and be able to build so much more modular bases. It's really cool. So all that to say, fixing the bugs is of course necessary. And I think it's a little bit not to their standards that they've left these bugs in the game for so long. They're known by Wooba, and they haven't been fixed for like 6 months. I just don't think that's totally to their standards. I'm not calling them out and saying anything bad about the devs. They're one of my favorite dev teams.
I don't know why my audio keeps going out. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Testing, testing. Sorry, folks. We seem to be having some technical difficulties. According to Discord, I am inputting.
That's all.
Can you hear me yet?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. I believe I've been, the recording has caught me. So anyway, what I'm not doing is saying the dev team's bad, yada, yada. Like, I'm not saying any of that. They are literally my favorite dev team of any dev team that's ever dev teamed. That being said, I've also seen how they've worked over the course of the last 7 years or whatever, and I don't think these parameterization bugs being in the game for 6 months is up to their standards. Like the standards I've seen them hold themselves to, I don't feel like this has gotten that treatment. So in that sense, it is a little bit of a call out. Like they haven't kept up their own, whatever their ethos has been about bugs hasn't been applied to this particular set of bugs. And that does feel a bit odd to me as someone from the outside looking in. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anybody is bad or anything, but it's just like, this looks weird given how I've seen this dev team operate for the last 7 years. Now, as far as the wish list, I think, I mean, it ranges from small to big. One of the small ones is just like the text boxes are tiny and they don't expand, even if there's room for them to expand. That needs to change. Like, I literally have a parameterization where I have a negative 31,250 typed in, and that doesn't even fit.
Like scroll through.
Yeah, you have to scroll through a negative 30,000. I could understand if you needed to scroll through 10 billion. But like 30,000 is not even a big number.
I don't understand it. If you can scroll through 10 billion, you should be able to do whatever. It should scale.
Well, yeah. I mean, if the window is not resizable, though, at some point it has to cut off. But the size that they give us is so small, especially when you start using any of the formula stuff like the count of, you know, like ingredient count or whatever. It's like you can't even see the tiny little bit you're working on. You basically have to write it in a notepad and copy it in because it's so tiny. It's unacceptably tiny, in my opinion. Yeah. So that's thing number one that seems easy on the to-do list is like give us more space for those text boxes. Obviously fixing the bugs. And then the biggest one for me that's given me trouble, and I'm sure there's more. I've used parameterization less than many, but one thing that has bothered me is it doesn't allow for the same input to separate into different outputs as far as numerals, like numerical values.
Yes, there's a reason for that, and I can go into that if you want. But that's actually something that I disagree on. I think that needs to stay.
Well, I think you should be able to I'm not saying they should be unlinked by default. I'm saying you should be able to unlink them. So let me get into what I'm asking for. Yes. If you set up a requester chest, let me just explain because not everyone even uses parameterization. Yeah, right. So you set up a requester chest and you request 5 iron plates and 5 copper plates. And then you copy that requester chest into a blueprint and you hit the parameterize button. You are allowed to parameterize both the things that you're requesting and the amount you're requesting, right? Numbers get to be parameterized as well. And so you'll have a little thing for the iron plate and you can parameterize that. And then if you were to paste that in the future, you could change that to any icon you want. You could request a symbol or 3s. Then you could change the copper into a separate parameter 2. And then when you paste it, you could then separately request these 2 things. But the 5 is just a 5. And if you turn that, you can turn it into a parameter or a variable that goes into a formula. Either way, though, you can never make it so that if you paste this blueprint down, I could request 5 of assembler 3s and 10 of steel plates. You can't do that. You would have to go back to before you made the parameterization and have 5 iron plates and 7 or 6 or anything that's not 5 copper plates. And then you can separately parameterize those numerals into being separate output values for your parameterization. And that is really frustrating when the thing that you make has a bunch of zeros in it. Zeros are something that a lot of things you might want them to default to 0, but you need to be able to change them later because the problem is it sets the defaults to whatever you had originally. And that's the main problem, is it's actually impossible to default a bunch of things to 0 that you might want to change separately later. Like if I wanted signal A to be 0 by default, but I could change it up to 10, I think like priorities on stations is a good example for this. Like you want your default station priority to be 0 because positive would be higher, negative would be lower. 0 is a nice default, works, middle of the number line. You also might want your, maybe your stack, like in CyberSyn, you have like locked slots signal. You also might want that signal to be 0 by default, of course, because most trains don't need locked slots. However, if you parameterize this, now those zeros are linked together forever, and you cannot separately say, ooh, for this station, I want my priority to be 10, but my locked slots to be 1. You can't do that anymore. You'd have to have the wrong default to be able to separately assign these values when you paste it. I'll stop talking now, but that's my wish, is somehow we can get that.
Here's the challenges. So I have a way that I think addresses the challenges, by the way. So let me just say that I'm not just about to list problems and then not say what to do about it, right? But the problem is, how do you actually go about giving the user an interface to do this? And the main problem is like, okay, so you've taken a blueprint of something, right? You have something you built in the world, you took a blueprint of it, and you clicked on the parameterize button so you can start doing stuff. Then you start typing in the various numbers and values for the formula that you want to use. And when you save it, it gets sort of like glommed together, and you have now all of a sudden the issue of, I can't change the number of whatevers because I used a 5 here, I used a 5 here, and they got sealed together. And so when I go to actually instantiate this blueprint, it only asks me one time for the number that would then apply to the 2 different 5s that I don't want it to. I want it to apply 1 5 here and then 1 5 there, right? So how do you go back and fix that? Like, what's the UI for it? This is the issue, or one of the issues, I should say. Like, under the hood, the reason they did this was one of the assumptions that they made that I tend to disagree with. I'll talk a little bit more about this later when it comes time for other assumptions they've made with like space logistics and stuff. But basically, they made the assumption of, okay, you just took a whole battery of whatever it is, assembling machines that are making copper plate, or not making copper plate, green circuits, and you want them all to be tied together in the number of inputs, outputs, whatever. You want those numbers to be tied together. And you don't want to have to go and sit there and like set them all. And it's going to happen more often that you run into that situation than you do when you're making the sort of like individual fanned out situation. And technically, despite it being very poorly communicated in a system that's still a bit buggy, there is a workaround, and it's what you mentioned earlier. That is, you set the numbers manually and you make them different. And so when the pop-up comes when you go to instantiate your blueprints, you actually get 2 different fields in which you can enter a number. Perfectly fine.
It's not a workaround though, because the defaults are wrong then.
So the defaults being wrong is annoying, but I also, you're right that is a downside to the workaround, because obviously workarounds have downsides, otherwise they would be the way, not a workaround. So I do agree that it is a downside, but the challenge is, how do you get around that? Now here's my notion, right? So my notion is there could be a flag that you could essentially say when you are making the blueprint, when you're making the parameterization of the blueprint, gosh, things I have to say in order for this concept to make sense, you would essentially flag it as this number should be unique, right? Now, let's say you did that too late, right? Let's say you forgot to do that. Do you have to then go back and redo the whole thing? The easy on the dev's answer is yes, you just have to redo the blueprint. And it shouldn't be too onerous, but obviously that's not necessarily the case. If you make a very detailed parameterization of a blueprint that involves a lot of work, this could actually be a pretty big ask. However, it would be cool if there is a way to, in a sense, go backwards. Like, let's say you have a blueprint that has a parameterization in it. It would be cool if there was a button to say, like, essentially disassociate and go back to how it was when we first started this process. And then you simply have to, so you take the blueprint, you click on the parameterization button, and it disassociates, and you can do whatever you need. But beyond that, I don't know what else to do.
I actually have a pretty good solution here. Again, like, I don't know how easy it would be to code or whatever, but as far as graphically and how it would work for the player, I think it's pretty elegant. Because the game already knows where all those fives are coming from. Like if you have an arithmetic combinator that's outputting, copper plate times 5, and then in the same blueprint you have a requester chest that's asking for 5 steel plates and 5 copper plates. There's 3 fives that are going to show up in your parameterization. And when you copy that, you hit the blueprint button, you hit parameterize. If you mouse over the 5 field, it actually shows the tooltip pop up. And it will show an arithmetic combinator and a 5. And then it'll show your requester chest copper plate 5. It actually shows you all 3 of those 5s right there in a tooltip. So what you could do is have an expansion button on the 5 field where you'd hit like a plus, and it would pop open those 3. And now you have each 3 as a separate 5, and you could change those to different numbers. And once you hit that expansion button, it would then uniqueify, which is not a word, but I made it a word, those 3 5s. So they could even remain 5s, but they would be separately parameterized on paste. And because it already knows that those 5s are separate. Like you can see in the tooltip that the game sees those 5s as separate things. It even shows you the source of each 5. But there's no way for you to disentangle those 5s in the parameterization screen. But the game has disentangled them. It sees all the separate places that those 5s are. Now, on the code side, maybe they made a shortcut where it doesn't disentangle them, and that saves some performance or something. But that's a coding issue. That's not like the game's not capable of it issue. Like the game is capable of seeing these as separate 5s. Is my point.
So I had this discussion in detail with the devs, and the answer is yes, that's exactly what happened. And when the dictionary that's stored that maps the things across, it does lose the information about where they came from.
Right.
So that was a thing. I don't know if that's still a thing. I don't know if I'm misremembering the exact details of that conversation. I don't know if I should say anything, but the point is that, yeah, there is an implementation problem. But I agree. Like, if you could do that, that would be fantastic. But
yeah, and the defaults being wrong is frustrating, especially if you have a massive blueprint, because then you need to set a lot of things to the intentionally wrong amount for default, so that you can then, whenever you paste it, you have to manually go change all of those, which is kind of undoing part of the whole point of parameterization, which is like the QOL, paste it and not have to redo it. So I actually think it's a pretty fundamental design flaw in how we have it. Now, you are correct. You are correct that like 90, maybe 98% of cases, it doesn't matter, because you're right that if you have 5 in a bunch of places, you usually do want to change all those 5s to a 6 at the same time. But not every time. And especially for weird stuff like trains and combinators, you find yourself running into these number conflicts more often.
Well, imagine this scenario. This is the other problem that crops up. Imagine the scenario where the number 5 shows up on 2 different assembling machines, right? And they're not linked in the sense of like they shouldn't both be 5s all the time. You might want to change it. But now all of a sudden, when you go to uniqueify these things, how do you uniqueify the number 5 on the one assembling machine and not the other? Now you need to create an entire UI for this. You can uniqueify categories. Like you could say, let me make the category of the inserter one to be unique and the category of assembling machine one to be unique. But you couldn't easily without there is no simple that I know of anyways.
Right, because it would say 5x combinator in the tooltip. Exactly. It wouldn't separate out each 5 of the combinators.
That's exactly.
Yep.
And so that creates its own issue. And honestly, that's something that a lot of people would, I think, want to do when they're trying to like paste entire bases down, when they're trying to parameterize like a, I don't know.
So then my fix for that is maybe slightly change the original solution. Instead of having a dropdown that allows you to pick which ones, it just allows you to set a default. So you could, maybe you have to do the original workaround where instead of having 5s, you do need to set it to a 5, 6, 7, 8. So they're uniqueified that way. But then when you're actually setting up the parameterization, you can change those 5, 6, 7, 8 to all default to 0 or 5. And then that way you can separate them out on the parameterization end as before, but they have the correct default value when you paste it so that you don't have to manually change them all. That's one another way to fix it.
And the other one is to just not do anything about it and say, look, if you need to, like if you have the if you can uniqueify based on these criteria, maybe that's enough functionality. That and if you need to uniqueify a layer deeper, then maybe just make different blueprints. But I don't know. This is a usability thing. that I just don't know the correct answer to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Anyway,
do
we
know that
should
it would
move
be nice to
on.
be able to unify them at all. So we're in complete agreement there.
Yeah, yeah. We should move on from parameterization. We've got more to dream about.
Yes.
Okay, so other 2.1 wishlist stuff. Simple one for me is the pinned views having an expand and minimize
So that's not
window.
just taking up this huge brick on the side of your
So
screen all
it's
the
not
time.
taking up all of my screen space.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That one is, again, we've talked about this so many times over the last 41 episodes, but like sometimes the dev team for this particular game makes decisions that are like so against what my default understanding of what would be user friendly would be. And it always has a good reason. And I put good in quotes because good is a very vague word. But like the reasons, if the devs who made those decisions were to explain them to you, you'd be like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I can even understand how maybe there was some things I didn't see. But a lot of the time it still lands with me as the user feeling like, yeah, but it's still not how I want to play the game. Like it just doesn't work the way I'd expect to work. Everything in every app ever has a little plus and a minus where I can expand and contract a list of big things. Why does this not, especially when it's taking up my screen real estate? And then it makes tooltips go off the bottom of the screen. And don't even get me started on how, well, because Kovarex plays with tooltips over the mouse, then it's like, no. Most people play with tooltips over to the right side of the screen. I've never seen a streamer play with tooltips over their mouse where like tooltip shows up when you hold the Alt key or whatever. I know that some people play that way, but most people do not. That is just a fact. Like I've never seen a streamer once who plays that way. I've never even seen it. I didn't even know that was in the game until I got into this exact discussion with, I don't know if it was a dev or a modder or somebody on one of the Discords at some point, and they were like, oh, you should try. And I tried it and it didn't work for me. I respect that people can play that way, but having a feature in your game that doesn't exist because of only the way that person plays, but most of your user base doesn't, that doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't jive. Like, for most people, it's actually sending tooltips off the bottom of their screen if they have a lot of pinned views in Space Age. And that's not a good thing.
Be, I think. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No question. Yeah, more UI move around ability and customization would be good, but I do accept that it's a bit much to make your screen so busy, but this shouldn't be that hard. This is just a pretty like would be an upgrade considered by nobody to be a downgrade, I think.
Yeah, and the note, again, back to the like, I've seen a post about this on Reddit like once a month at least kind of thing. You know, like it's the community as a whole is in agreement that this would be something they'd like. So I actually expect to see
I just don't use
something.
them because of this, by the way. Like I literally, like I had some pinned places and it just got really annoying. And I was just like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right, what are some other kind of like core Space Age game features that you might wish for in 2.1?
Well, so you mentioned it here. A reason to make it to the Shattered Planet was one that I was hoping you would expand on some. But like, I can fully agree that it would be really good if there was something to do there. But there is a defense I have for that one. And in Factorio, the end game has classically been somewhat open-ended, where you could create your own, I want to be able to succeed in this way, or like this many rockets per minute, this much science per minute, whatever. You'd launch the rocket. This is prior to Space Age, and I guess still is Vanilla 2.0. You would launch the rocket, and then you could build up your base and whatever. Well, when Space Age released, they needed to come up with something that you could essentially do the same thing with. That is to say, continue to grow despite having reached what is ostensibly the end of the game. And this is what they came up with. The problem, of course, is that now that the people are, well lodged in the ecosystem, they've made a whole lot of builds, they've done a lot of testing, people can actually get there. I don't know. I mean, sure, they kind of knew people could eventually get there if they did it well enough. But I don't know, like, it's sort of like the, what's it? Moby Dick catches the whale. What do you do now? I don't know. I'm oversimplifying that, but it's like you get there. What do you do now? Like the unfortunate fact is that like it can't go on forever, at least by the code, and maybe it shouldn't go on forever. Maybe there should be a thing there, but like I think that was just sort of like tacked on near the end, and and said, "Look, we need to have some reason for the player to continue building and expanding." And this is what they came up with. And yet, as a as it is a thing you can do, a part of me wants to have something to do there. Like maybe the
Right, right. It's like
game needs an
adding
end, but
it's like when you beat the game adding in an endless mode, but then the endless mode actually has an end. And
yeah,
then
exactly.
when you get
That's
to
it.
the end, it doesn't even say congratulations. That's a little
Right.
disappointing. So I think what I'm getting at there is like I don't want it to be a major gameplay thing because I don't think getting to the Shattered Planet is a reasonable expectation of players. It is not easy to build a platform that does it. I don't think it's that hard either if you have it go slow, but it is not easy either. But most people who try to build a platform that's capable of getting there succeed, but it might take them a while and it's not easy by any means. So,
It also feels kind of dumb. Like, I'm sorry.
well, it takes like
Can I
hours.
just say
Like
that?
it's ridiculous
Well, no,
how
but I
many
mean, like,
asteroids there are.
it just the goal itself. I'm gonna go fly into the chunks of an exploded planet. Why are we doing this thing? Why would we do this?
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
I'm gonna go to the core of the sun.
yeah. I
Why?
think
What?
I think if there's a reward there, it needs to be more like feel goods for the player, but not gameplay related. Because obviously, if you put gameplay related stuff there, then it's going to feel
People have
like,
been
well,
off
you
of it.
haven't beaten the game until you go to the Shattered Planet,
Right.
and then everyone feels like they have to do it, and that's not fun.
Sure.
But I
So
at
yeah.
least think of a fun, some Easter eggs, some fun messages to the player, maybe some sort of fancy statistics screen that pops up with like fun statistics that the regular victory screen doesn't show you. Just something. Give the player something. I don't know.
Right.
Again, this is just a wish list.
Yeah. So that was one thing that I'll let you talk about that one. Your
Oh, I was just going to say
behind the
another thing
scenes.
for me for 2.1 is it's just some rebalancing on combat. That's we've talked about combat a million times. I won't get into how I feel about combat in Factorio in general, but it just felt like the balancing on some stuff was weird in 2.1 and some like Gleba was weirdly like hard and easy at the same time it's like some people had horrible times on Gleba because there were a lot of pentapods around them and other people like had very few. And I don't know, just some of the weapons feel too weak or too powerful or both, and there's too many weapons, and so balancing them all is really hard. I don't even know exactly what I'm asking for here. So again, this is a vague wish, but if I could get what I wish for, I think combat and weaponry would feel better in Factorio. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly all the specifics on exactly what I want and don't want out of that, but I know overall I don't feel amazing about space age combat. I felt better about vanilla Factorio combat far more than space age's combat and mechanics and varieties and stuff.
Yeah, the combat, it's I don't know. I just don't enjoy it. Like when
Right,
I
right. Which is
did my
which is a
playthrough.
separate. We'll ignore that part because like if we don't like it, we don't like it, and that's
Well, no, no,
not
no, no. But there's reasons. It's not like I just I don't I prefer spicy over sweet, right? Whatever. It's not that.
sure.
It's that when I did my playthrough, right of Space Age, that started I didn't change a single setting. I played with the biters on and everything. There was a very large chunk of time where all I did was I walked around my stupid base, and I had to shore it up so
The
that I could go
wall, the
into
wall
space.
phase, yeah,
And it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. It's
yeah, it was
monotonous.
bad.
It does not feel good. And on the other, like, I want to take the next step in the game, which is
Mm-hmm.
to go to space, which I am so excited for. I just bought this expansion, and I can't. And I'm literally spending. It was, I think, 20 hours was how long it took me because of just all the stupid little setups that I had to do and shore up, and it was just
Yeah.
it was horrible.
Well, and you
And then
either
I get
need you either need a base wide bot network, or you need to manually go build walls around your entire base, or you need
yeah,
to shut down your entire base so it doesn't create any pollution. But even that's not a perfect solution.
right,
There's no good solution there to go off planet, which
yeah,
is all you want to
and
do
then
when you can go off planet, like you said.
exactly. Like, I wanna go see the other planets. This is great, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like I did it in a certain order, and that order was I went to Vulcanus because it had the simplest of enemies. And then I went to Fulgora because it had no enemies, and then I went to Gleba, which thank you to I think it was Trupin who was like, Gleba is miserable. So I was like, okay, I'll save that one for last. And that was unfair. But at the same time, when I got to Gleba, by that time I had like whatever the Tesla weapons, and I think that's one of the good counters to those enemies there. So it wasn't so bad for me, but it also was I had these pentapods around. I need them for production, so I can't quite kill them all. Also, if I get too big, they're going to come eat me. And oh, by the way, walls do nothing. Um, and so I just didn't want to engage. And what it made me do was I just built small. I kept building small so that I would not get them to come and eat my base. And that felt terrible. Like, this is Factorio. This is a game of excess. You're supposed to build big. Go big or go home. And I'm sitting here like, oh, well, there's that 5-legged thing over there going to come stomp on my face. And I'm like, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So it's not like, when I say I don't like it, it's not like spicy versus sweet. There's actual reasons that it led to gameplay that I don't think is good. But that's again my sassy.
Yeah. I mean, I think a little bit of it's spicy versus sweet because some people like building a wall around their entire base, and that's fair for them to like that. We can have our opinions though, which is we don't, and we don't think that that's great gameplay for the average player. But I'm not. My thought here is more that, like, one idea. This just came to my mind when you were talking. Like, when you want to leave Novice and you can't because you're not protected against every possible biter expansion. What if they had added some feature where, as you research your first planet, you also research biter mollification bomb that you launch in the stratosphere, and it spreads this mist over the planet, and that way biters won't attack while you're gone. And then you don't have to wall up every single inch of your base with a million turrets so that biter expansion won't ruin your base, and you also don't have to shut down your base. Like, it allows you to actually just leave and not have to worry that because you're gone, your base will die. And I think something like that could have been nice. Or on Gleba, Gleba felt too similar to Novice to me, which was just, you just need to have an entire perimeter of defenses. It's the same thing as Novice, even though it's different enemies, and that is fun. The actual mechanics of them didn't feel different enough to me, even though if this was like a tower defense game, like the pentapods are totally different than the biters and the spitters, but like, it's not a tower defense game. It's a game where you build a wall of towers, and that is a checkbox.
Yeah,
and exactly. you check the exact same box on Gleba that you do on Novice, and it didn't feel different in any mechanical way. It was just, I'm pasting a different tower and a different blueprint of towers because now I need rocket towers and laser towers, and I'm done. And now I'm protected forever. And there was nothing there that felt any different. And then on Aquilo, I actually wished there had been something to shoot. Now, I'm not saying I wish that it attacked me. Those are very different things. But I wish there had been something to shoot. It felt weird to go to the final planet, and it was just dead and quiet and cold. And it was cool. I liked the heat pipe thing. I thought that was interesting, and I liked it, actually. But I kind of found myself wishing there was some reason to build railguns on Aquilo, like it, where you get them. I don't know.
See, for me, I'm exactly the opposite. I never played Aquilo, so I guess I can't say, but I'm very glad that they didn't, because it sounds like there is already a whole lot of like logistical challenges, both in terms of heat and also getting goods to the planet.
There are, again, notice I'm saying something to shoot, not something that attacks you. Those are very different.
That's fair.
Something more akin to Vulcanus, where it's like there's at least something that involves going boom in a fun way that almost feels more like a reward than like a checkbox.
I haven't blown up an alien for an hour. What's going on?
Exactly. Just a little bit of that, not necessarily something that like is making defenses terrible. Anyway.
Fair.
All right. What else for our 2.1 wish list?
So one of the things that I really, really want is a clearer understanding of how orbital logistics work. Because right now there is so much happening under the hood. It feels like very trust us, bro. It'll just work. And kind of it does, but not usually in the way that I want. And in order to get different behaviors to emerge from the system I've set up, I have to really get into the nitty-gritty details of things. And sometimes there's just no explanation. So like for example, you put some goods into a rocket that you want to then send to your platforms, and you say, I'd like it to go to this platform over here that's requesting it. Wrong. Because you also forgot that you had this other platform over here that was also requesting it. And there's something that meant it is now higher up in the chain, and there's some obscure reason as to why it'll shoot to the other platform and not the one you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't get me wrong. If you don't care and you're just throwing, like if you have a shipyard building going on, sure. But let's say you're not. Let's say it's the beginning of your journey and you really have no idea A, how this all works, or B, what you're going to need. You want to be very precise in where things go. And to a certain extent, you can be precise. You can just say, turn off auto shooting, right? But this is an automation game. It would be very nice if the transition from that stage to, okay, now I want to automate making these things, you could actually control where these things go. And it was explicit, not just sort of
Yeah.
under the hood assumed.
And what's
So
crazy to me
that
is
would be
like
nice.
the UI UX isn't that hard to think about, where it's like, oh, on your silo, you can hit automatically launch. And then there's just a checklist of stations that it will or won't launch to. Done. Done.
This
It's that
comes back
easy.
to, well, this comes back to what I was trying to do with peer-to-peer, because the extensions to that include what happens when you have multiple surfaces on a planet. So not just one planet surface, but
Mm-hmm.
several. And you have multiple rocket silos on those surfaces, and you have multiple platforms that are in orbit that can all be reached. And how do you make this work together? And I was trying to work out a system for which you could do this. And you could have intersurface logistics on the planet. That would be cool too. But all of these things are essentially doable. I mean, yes, there are some questions that you would need to answer. There are some assumptions you would have to work out. And it is a design cycle. But it's doable, and it would, I think, make the game a lot better, in my opinion.
Yeah, it felt really weird to me. I couldn't automate launches and have a required signal to launch either. And a lot of people were like, why is this not in the game? And they had it and removed it at one point, which
Right.
is crazy to me.
Yeah.
That one just, again, it's like you tried to make the game simpler, and in doing so, you gave less control to players. And like, did it really, how were that many players falling into a trap with that functionality? Like, it just feels, I don't know. I don't understand that
Well,
one.
it feels like an extension of the logistics bot network to me. So, like with the logistics bot network, you don't really think about the nitty gritty jobs. What you do is you put sources and sinks around and expect the bots to essentially facilitate having goods go from the sources to the sinks.
Right.
Essentially, I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but that's basically it. And the way you capture the different rules for the different behaviors that you want are you
Right.
have chests that have logistical limits, they have different types of chests, etc. And it's clever, and it really feels like they went with that same kind of ethos
Sure.
with the shipyards.
And it
But the
works for
problem is,
bots because
be,
you have 50 of them. There's not a
yeah,
20-second launch sequence for
50.
each one, and they
Them's
don't
rookie
cost
numbers.
you thousands of resources each time they move.
Exactly. Right. Like when a bot, like you have swarms of bots doing all these things, except for when it comes to the ships, it's exactly what you say. It's so much. Like, oh, I understand that, yes, they made, not, it's not true in vanilla 2.0 now, but in Space Age, it's much cheaper to build a rocket. And
Yeah.
yet, it is still a significant draw of resources.
And it
So,
feels
yeah,
big. The feeling to the player is
exactly.
like launching one rocket is a big deal. Even though,
And
yes,
it
the goal
should.
is to have multiples, and they will, not being able to control individual rocket launches to a finer degree, or even just to automate rocket launches to only this platform, it does feel weird.
Yeah.
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 Anyway.
And it would, having the dopamine hit of now these things are doing exactly what I want would, I think, feel a
Yeah.
lot richer than what we've got now. But that's,
Yeah.
again, so we'll see what they do with that.
Also,
But
on the
that's my hope.
orbital request, or the requests for orbital requests list is orbital requests are really weird, and you can only request from a specific planet, and you can't say, hey, I would like to take this thing only from Navis, but drop it to all the other planets potentially. And it's been so long since I played Space Age, I'm not phrasing that exactly right. But whatever it is, there's no easy way to turn it on for all planets. I think I'm
I'm not
thinking
sure.
of allowing dropping to. or not requesting from. Again, I apologize. It's been so long
That's
since
okay.
I've played Space Age.
Yeah.
But there's something, I've seen a post on Reddit for this exact thing a dozen times, and it's exactly what I felt when I played Space Age, where I'm like, why can't I just say, hey, this thing always gets taken from Gleba, but I deliver it to everywhere else, and I don't want to take it from other places. That's what it was, I think, or something like
And
that.
this is part of what I was trying to accomplish with the peer-to-peer system. At least that's what my personal, if I had been the one making the mod, had been my design intent. But being able to do that would be huge. And
Yeah.
again, it kind of falls into the broader category of give us more granular control with automation over the orbital logistics. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and thinking my thoughts just went back to my idea of like if silos could have a checklist of which platforms they do and don't launch to, then it's like, well, but should that be circuit interactable? You start to get into the weeds as a dev. I get that.
it's
That's
tough.
really complex, but again, separating out the idea of it's hard to dev versus, but what's the user experience? And the user experience is pretty bad right now because I can't just automate a rocket that sends to only my defense platform, only my my iron mining platform. I want this rocket to only send this to there, and I can't do it unless I turn off automation completely. And that just feels pretty bad. Anyway, so are there any other kind of things you didn't have written down for 2.1 that you've thought of? Or
you have fungible lower tier quality.
oh
I
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
quite sure
yeah.
what you meant by that.
This is 99% not going to happen, but it's on my wish list. If I'm dreaming for ponies, this is the pony.
Yeah, for recipes.
The feature they had promised us that they didn't give us. Well, I say promised. That's the wrong word. The feature they had said would be in the game in an FFF, then ended up not being in the game because it was probably not performant, which is and this would require recoding things from a base level. It's just, this is Factorio 2 wishes, not 2.0 wishes, but fungible lower tier quality. If I have a rare item, it should be able to stand in for an uncommon if I want it to, because that would vastly simplify so many chains where your whole goal is to just produce uncommon things anyway. And yeah, it might spit out a rare once in a while, but you don't care about that rare because you're just trying to make an uncommon only set. And now you have to deal with that rare, and it's a pain in the butt. Even if it's just recycle it and delete it, that's still a pain in the butt. That it's like, why can't I just use that rare as an uncommon ingredient so that then I can make this uncommon next step in the crafting chain? Like, it's just so frustrating how quality all kind of came to be so what's the word I'm looking for? Faffy. You have to faff about with it so much to do what feel like simple things. And one huge help would be being able to fungibly use higher tiers as lower tiers if you want to.
Touching on that, I actually did this in my own mod, Galdoc Manufacturing, where I have different tiers of the properties. So there was like very high tensile, whatever. And I put in, and it happens automatically. The ability to basically scale down. You can't scale up, you can only scale down. But it did require actually putting it into a machine designed for it that had the recipes to do it. And the recipe was there were a lot of recipes. Like,
yeah, because I assume it was like a smelter where it like auto picked the recipe based on what was in it, kind of thing.
I couldn't because there are too many entry points for there. It was not, if it had been a 1-to-1 relationship between, then yes, but no, it wasn't. So it couldn't even be a furnace. And don't get me wrong, it's not the worst, but in gameplay, terms, that feels like something that should be hand waveable. That's something that we don't need. Like, I can come up with a UI for this easily. It's not a UI problem though. And there were other issues that were cropping up that were things like, well, you can maybe duplicate this if you interrupt the craft, and you do this with the what are the modules and stuff. And there was a workaround where you could end up doing some kind of janky thing and get a whole bunch of something. I forget the exact details. If I remember correctly, it needed babysitting. I don't know. I figured, however, there was a better solution than what they came up with, which was to just chop off a piece of this and make these things explicit. That being said, I don't have any expectation of that one. I wish. But
Yeah, I mean,
you hit the
again,
nail on the head at the very top of it, which is it did involve a whole lot of recoding of very fundamental how assembling machine works.
yeah, and we know that
Levels
they
of code.
removed that specifically for performance reasons. Like they said that explicitly in an
Yeah.
FFF or a response to someone in a Discord or something. So it's sad to me because that, I think, quality probably still wouldn't be my favorite thing even if that was added, but it would certainly help me get there.
Sure.
Anyway, all right. Well, that's kind of our wish list and lots of discussion around the wish list for 2.1. Let's talk a little bit about modding moving forward, and we'll probably not spend a super duper long time here because we're already at an hour and 15 minutes because we always have so many things to talk about.
Yes, we do.
But obviously 2.1 is for the game, for Space Age, but also Factorio is, obviously a huge modding community game. It has, intrinsic modding support. The devs are famous for being good at supporting modders and being very quick to respond and fixing bugs that only apply to the modded version of the game, like stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
you as a modder also have some perspective that I don't in terms of like, what do we hope for modding moving forward? Whether it's 2.1 or post 2.1.
Sure. So, like, from the perspective of the mods that I had been developing for the longest time, I want a more flexible star map. I had worked for a while with Code Green on making a star map, but it seemed like it got stuck in some way. I never was able to get my hands on it. It just seemed like it stalled out, and there was always other things to do. So, but it would be very, very nice if there was some method by which we could have more star systems, a galaxy, have more surfaces on a given planet, have different things in orbit, and being able to sort of invest modding concept resources, if you will, into making different kinds of things for the player to do other than be on surface, make rocket, go to platform, platforms talk each other, now done. I mean, I'm again super oversimplifying here, but like there are so many different things that, when I was really, really coming up with tons of ideas and fanning everything out and, various things for the player to do, it didn't fit the mold that was sort of hard coded in the game.
Yeah.
And I understand to a certain extent that they're making the game. They've already kind of gone above and beyond with the game in terms of the modding community in mind. But it is definitely something that I feel like if they made it more robust would lead to a wide breadth of new stuff. And I know they've added some features to that end, but like there's just not enough. And
Yeah.
I like us having to roll our own star map definitely didn't. I mean, though it was really, really cool, it would have been way too much work in order to make the whole thing fit together. So that's just one of the things that I would kind of like wish for if I could wave a magic wand.
Right. Yeah.
Other ones would be true exclusive probabilities in recipes. The rationale here has always been, well, on the scale of a large factory automating stuff, you don't need it because, yes, you can end up in these weird situations where you make one recipe that randomly rolls and gives you both outcomes. On the scale of a factory, it won't really work out that way. And to a certain extent, I get it, but for certain things that you might want the player to experience, which might look like making very not factory-sized recipes, but rather very small runs that are very impactful nonetheless, sensitive things. It would be really cool to be able to have that in the game. There's been talk about, well, there's no way to make the UI good, which is not true. I came up with a mock-up for it. It was fine. So it would be cool if that was in the game too. But again, that does sort of involve, and I think someone had kind of done it at one point, but maybe there were bugs. I don't know. It seems like something that would be a natural extension of how the game
Sure.
allows modders to capture the ideas behind making stuff.
Well, yeah, because I mean, a simple idea would be like if I make, and they kind of, it's funny because quality in some ways is exclusive probabilistic outputs because it's like, well, it's either going to be a normal item or it's going to be an uncommon item. And it can't be
Sure.
both.
Yeah.
But we can't do that if like, oh, I'm painting this item and it'll either become Okay, painting is a bad idea. Let's say you're applying some, think like Pinodon's Alien Life, and it's like, oh, I'm mutating this animal, and there's a 95% chance it becomes
Yeah.
animal A, but then a 5% chance to mutate in animal B, and it could never be animal A and B.
Right.
Like, we should be able to do that. That it's a
Yeah.
very simple idea. Well,
Other
again, simple
ones,
idea, maybe not simple to make.
I think I look
I
at
don't
that
know
and I
that
see that's
stuff.
probably not that
That's above
complicated, is my thought.
above my pay grade, but anyway.
But other things would be like making it so that making UI wasn't so painful. When I went to go do it, and don't get me wrong, there is a native pain to working with UI, no matter what system you're working in, because there's just some things that you use programs all the time, and they have user interfaces, user experiences, and you're like, wow, it would be great if this thing was over here. It turns out that to actually do the thing that puts it there is not trivial. There are so many things that can vary, screen size, what settings they have, etc., that it becomes fairly difficult to actually nitty-gritty code. And I get that. So to a certain extent here, I'm not pointing any specific problem, but the overall experience of making a UI element in Factorio is just very painful. And there are libraries that people have made, in a sense, competing libraries even, to help address this pain, and they help, but then they also represent yet another learning curve and hurdle that you must overcome. Um, and even
Yeah.
then, when you get there, there's still a bunch of stuff you can't do. Like there may be some really in-depth hack workaround, but like you can't put UI elements in specific, like in arbitrary places on some kind of a canvas. It has to be relative to these other things, and there are some things that I would like to be able to do with it in terms of putting things in places that were more intuitive. That would be huge. I see that one as a very unlikely, because it's not only a nebulous sort of thought, but it's also a bit, well, it's already working, so just scale the learning curve.
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, the way that you make UI in Factorio is you just ask Rygard how to do it.
He's one of the people that makes the libraries I was talking about.
Yeah, like he's the only person that understands Factorio UI, as far as I
Him and
know.
Code Green, those are the two.
Yeah, yeah.
When I make that statement.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
What else?
And then a more interesting implementation of quality. Like, I still don't have that many tools to make quality interesting. We've griped about this in the past, but usually it's from the standpoint of, as a player, it's very breadth and not depth. It really isn't depth. Like, there's no world in which quality represents depth. I'm just sorry. It kind of does, but it really is breadth. And it would be really interesting if I could do things like change how the outcomes would propagate through, how you could do them, and how it could influence recipes that could accept more of a, as you mentioned earlier, spread of qualities. In your instance, we were talking about fungible lower tier qualities, but there are other things that you could ostensibly do there. And have that influence the kind of outcomes that you would get from that recipe. How many items are made, etc. So
I mean, with quality, that my wish list, I had like 7 major items that were on it, and I think we got one of them. I had this wish list like before Space Age even came out, of like, here's what I hope quality will allow for in terms of modding, even like not just what's in the base game. What's in the base game is fine, I don't love it, but it's like, it is what it is. But like, how can we change it in mods? Well, we can't. It's like, okay, if you have quality on, it's on for everything, and all the tiers are on for everything. It's like, I'd like to be able to have certain items only have certain tiers enabled. I'd like to be able to have certain items different tiers have actually different recipes. It's not just all the same idea of like this upcycles idea. There's also the idea of like certain items just not having recipe or quality enabled, certain changing the effect of quality on an item by item basis rather than just the whole category does thing X. The list goes on, and we have like none of those things.
Yeah, like being able, from the very, very simple thing of just giving me the ability to make an adjective category that isn't World of Warcraft, right? And saying, okay, these items go to this category, these items go to that category, these items go to that category.
I'm not following. What do you mean?
So imagine, for example, you wanted to take iron plates and you could say crude iron plate, refined iron plate, pure iron plate, etc. But you don't want those adjectives to apply to your engines. You could have your engines be,
Oh, you mean
basic engine,
different
well-oiled
categories
engine,
of
da da da.
items having different
But
names.
and all it does is name it differently.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and I'm not going to say who and I'm not going to say where, but I brought this up at one point and it was like, well, there was someone who was making fun of the fact that, everyone crowed about they wanted this feature and then we gave them the ability to change names and then no one did anything with it. And my point was, yeah, you made it one size fits all and that sucks. He's like, well, if, that's your problem. Is it though? That's actually how language works. So
Right.
anyways, sorry. I'm
Yeah,
griping
yeah.
about an argument no one was present for.
All that to say, yeah, I mean, I think quality is one that, and we've had many discussions on this podcast, even before your time, and even when you were here before you were the co-host. Like you and I have talked about it a dozen times, so we'll move on from that. But we wish quality could do a lot more, especially for modding. Now, I want to talk a little bit, or I guess there's one more thing on this.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
Oh, I just wanted to talk about modding moving forward and what we want from modding, and then we'll come back to this other idea. But essentially, like, Space Age has been out for a year. And as someone who almost exclusively has played overhaul mods for a long time now, I did play a Death World before Space Age came out, and I played vanilla Space Age. But apart from that, I've had no vanilla Factorio experience in like 3 years or more. I'm a little bit feeling hungry and dried up for no overhaul mods. Yeah. There haven't been. I mean, now Pyanodons is incredible, and the alternative energy release, and I'm loving my playthrough, and I have no plans to stop it anytime soon. But I don't want Pyanodons to be the only thing in the ecosystem right now that I'm interested in. And yeah, the Krastorio 2 updated to be spaced out. There's like a Space Age version, but like it seems like most modders, and to be fair, rightly so, it's a new exciting thing, but most modders have been on the hype/interest train of like add-on planets for Space Age, which are cool again. But like, what if you don't love Space Age kind of as a core experience in the first place? Well, then those add-on planets aren't really that interesting to you. Or minor overhauls for Space Age. Like some people have done, minor things, but I wouldn't call them an overhaul mod.
Sure. Right.
And then there's also been a lot of work being done on retrofitting previous overhauls for Space Age, which again is cool. But if you don't love the Space Age brand, then this isn't the kind of thing that interests you, which is me. Like, I'm not that interested in Krastorio plus Space Age. That doesn't sound that fun to me. I want Krastorio version of Space Age. That sounds interesting. But like, I don't want Gleba with a couple Krastorio pieces sprinkled in. I want Krastorio Gleba, which it doesn't sound, and that would be a ton of work to make. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to sound impatient with any of this. Like, I'm talking about people doing things with their free time. Like, they have no obligations to do. I'm just making a wish list. What I wish for would be a brand new overhaul mod that might use some Space Age elements in terms of like the mechanics, but isn't like tied into Gleba, Vulcanus, Fulgora stuff. Like it is Nauvis, maybe plus other surfaces or planets if they want it to. But like, I'm looking for an overhaul, just a new overhaul experience that is its own thing. And we haven't had that since Space Age came out. So that's on my wish list.
And your interlocutor here, me in this case, is someone who is attempting to do exactly that.
You are, and so is Dave Kvist, who we've had on the show, and there are people working on these things. I'm sure there's more too.
And there are, and the problem is that. So, like for me, I can just tell you my personal experience is that partially I burned out, but partially I started taking a look at how much time it was going to take in order to make this thing. From the start, I always mentioned that this was something that I always was kind of afraid of happening, of me looking at it and saying, this is what my vision really is, and this is what it would take to make it. And at some point, it feels like I'm making a different game. Right. And it doesn't feel like that the Factorio engine is either robust enough to do what I want to do, or that I have it would be justified for me to spend that significant of a chunk of my entire life doing that thing.
Yeah, yeah,
And it wasn't
totally.
making me I can't make any money. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know how to. I'm not very good at promoting. I don't like being the person that's out there being like, "Sign up, do all the time." I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Like, I'm not criticizing anybody, especially not you or any of the other people who say, "Sign up for my Patreon." But there's a lot of times when I feel like I would have to bang that drum a lot harder than I know how to or feel comfortable doing personally. Because I just like I do exactly what you do. I put them in the beginning, at the and the end of content that I put out there. When it comes to like YouTube or whatever, I'm very bad about doing it on stream. I just forget to. But I only had a
Yeah.
handful of patrons,
Well, and you
and
also
there's
really digging into that requires you to be committed in a way that you might not even want to be committed to the projects that you'd be supported for. You know, it's like, I guess it's a little bit chicken or egg. Like, if you made enough money from it, then you'd be like, well, now this is my job and I can feel better
if I
about
could
putting
make a
time
living
into
from
it.
it doing it, I would
Yeah.
probably do it.
Yeah,
But I can't,
but that's a level of
or at
support
least I
that's
don't know
like
how.
extremely difficult to reach for something like modding.
Yeah.
And I've been in a lot of mod communities in a lot of different games, and I very few have ever had the kind of like following and support to actually financially support anyone doing it in like a job sense, if any. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I think there's probably been a couple, but it's
And
usually just
the other
for coffee and
Sure.
groceries. You know, it's like
And
the most you'll get.
the other problem is that there were a bunch of people that wanted to help. And some of them helped more than others, but the major problem I was running into wasn't any of the people. It was, in some instances, my vision, while I felt like it was resolved and clear, when it came time to actually implement it, there were hangups or things that simply didn't work. Just because I think I would like a system to work
Yeah.
this way, I don't yet have the answers to capture that. How do I make it work that way? How do I make it, how do I give the player this particular incentive? And what ended up happening was, at least, and it's not done. I was working on Hidden Worlds. It's not like, I'm not saying I'm never working on it again, but the problem I ran into was I didn't know how to organize other people in working on this. For my vision wasn't clear. It's the first time I've been a project manager with other people. And while I have some of the trappings of that, it doesn't mean it's, yes, we were meeting every week, and I had, some documents, but what site are these documents on would change every month or two. And, oh, I got to bring them over to here. And it started becoming a lot of overhead and a whole lot of things where I'm spending time on tasks that aren't design, but rather communication. And then I don't know
I
how to
mean,
put all that together
in
into a
many
finished
ways,
product.
you were making a game. You might call it an overhaul mod for Factorio, but you were making your own game. It's kind of like the people who made XCOM Long War, where it's like they rewrote so much code of XCOM and so much code injection and bonkers stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they became their own design studio and went on to make Terra Invictus, which is like a pretty successful Steam game, which I have in my library that I haven't tried yet, but I'm excited to. Anyway, the point is, like, Hidden Worlds is kind of that. It's like it's its own game. Like, there's so much to this. You're trying to get people organized, and like, yeah, it's all people working in their free time, which makes it harder to organize, because you can't, when people are working on their free time, you can't like be like demanding of them, because it's like, well, you're just here because you want to
Yeah.
help. But also, if you're not committed enough to be able to help in a certain way, is that actually that helpful at some point? And so it's like you have to figure that crap out. It's complicated. So on my wish list here is really, I'm wishing for a magical unicorn of a person who just has the passion and free time and ability and longevity of desire to work on something, because a lot of people start overhaul mods and then they don't get finished because it is such a hard thing. Like, I could never do it. And so it's like, when I look at all the overhauls we already have, I'm actually kind of like, wow, I'm impressed we have this many, because it is such a huge project. And the more extra mechanics that get added in, the harder it is to bring them to completion. And so on the one hand, I'm extremely grateful for all the ones we have and for all the modding community for Factorio being what it is. On the other hand, the game player side of me is like, I'd love a new overhaul, but like, the amount of work that goes into these is absurd. And what I'm asking for is a monumental project that like doesn't happen every day. So
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a 9,000 word introduction story, and it was really good. People who read it essentially said if this was a story and not a mod, that would be fine too. So I mean, it was a good story.
That's
And
awesome.
I am a 3D designer that learned how to do it during COVID. I already am a programmer, but I'm a better programmer now that I've gone through all the learning curve, overcome all the hurdles in the learning curve. Um, and in terms of like being able to code for Lua and making these add-ons and such. And I am a computer user writ large. Like there's a lot of stuff that I'm just good at. I'm voicing an audio novel right now. There's a lot of skills that I have. And there's one me. And even with a team, I didn't know how to make it work. So yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I know I
that's
keep
hard.
talking about myself, but to a certain extent, this is something I've really been wrestling with because
Yeah.
at one point it was 2-3 months ago, I sat down to stream and I didn't quite know what to work on. I'd been trying to figure out what to work on for the mod for the past week. And I sat down and I'm like, I still don't have an answer. Why don't I ask my community what they would like to see me do? I ended up playing Blueprints for 5 weeks.
That's a good choice.
I mean, look, it felt like a little vacation or a sabbatical or something. And honestly, it was really, really intense and it was great. And I love it. And I wouldn't have changed it for a thing because it's definitely a game worthy of praise. And then since then, I've been working on something in Godot. And every time I would go to work with Godot, which is, for those who don't know, a game engine, I basically didn't know what to work on that was of a small enough scale that it would actually be completable in a dev cycle. So, like right now,
Yeah.
it's on 4.5. They're already talking about 4.6. Major changes come when they change versions, but usually it's not so breaking, but it's breaking enough that you'd have to go back and fix stuff. Either way, I found something small to work on, and that's what I've been streaming a little bit recently. But like, it's a cursed chess variant. It's not.
Yeah.
It's a very small, bite-sized game that's
That's
not meant
cool.
to be sold per se, but it's meant to teach me enough about Godot to see whether or not making a larger project in it would work. What I would love is if they open source the engine. If
Yes.
Wooba open sourced their engine.
And I
And
believe they're planning on it, right? Have they
they've
officially said
mentioned it
that?
before, but have they officially said it? I'm not sure. Has it been sort of? I know some people have said it. I don't have any record of when, where, or to what account they should be held. But the major point that I'd make here is that words are free, and
It's
whether or not
true.
they haven't made a pledge, I know that. And even if they did, whatever, right? It's their engine. They need to be able to hang on to it and do stuff with it. And it's also a bit of a like if I thought modding was a learning curve, getting into a as tightly wound engine as the Factorio engine is reported to be, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
And yet, that would be neat. I don't know what would be the outcome. I know there was a push not to open source the engine, but like about 2 years ago, before Space Age, there was a mod that was released on the portal that all it did was it removed the need to have base, which sounds weird. What is base? Well, Factorio is essentially built in two major components, core and base, which I absolutely loathe as a naming structure because they both sound something fundamental, right? But core is the thing that you have to load no matter what, and base is essentially the base vanilla game.
Right. All
And
the
it's
assets and all
you
that
can't not
sounds.
require it.
Yeah.
Because if you did, you'd be making a brand new game, like completely new. Well, they did the thing where they said, okay, we're going to make a mod whose all it does is it says you no longer have to require base so that if you wish, you can go make a whole new game. And no one did anything with it.
Right.
It's too much work, it turns out.
Yeah.
But part of the problem is that what you would be working on making a whole new game is just another mod. So maybe I
Yeah.
personally think that had something to do with it.
And so
Whereas if
much
they
of
open
what
source
you'd
the
be
engine, you
doing is
could make
just
your own game.
so much of what you do is be copying what Factorio is already doing in its base.
Really?
Like,
You're right.
but you'd be able to make the few tweaks that you really want, but at what cost, kind of thing. Anyway, we have to move on for time constraints.
Sorry.
But no, I love this. But I do want to. The reason I'm moving us on is because we still have one more small topic to hit, which is the future of Wooba. because we know we're not getting Factorio 2. At least if we are, it's so many years in the future. I'll essentially say we're not getting it. That could always change in the future. But my question is, would we want Factorio 2? And when I say 2, I don't mean 2.0. I mean like a sequel game. It is a whole new game, brand new, coded from the ground up. It's not like some weird hack of current Factorio. Like Factorio 2. Would we want it?
I would. I mean, I don't know how much. The honest to goodness truth is, it would depend on how much DNA from the current Factorio can still be seen in Factorio 2.
By
You can
DNA, you
change-
mean from a gameplay perspective or from like a code-based perspective?
A gameplay perspective.
Okay.
So like you can change it so much that it's unrecognizable, or that it's not good. I wouldn't expect them to make those kinds of decisions, but like I'm thinking of Deus Ex Invisible War, where the game just felt very watered down. It was hard, like it was a sequel technically, but like you have they abstracted so much away. Oh, you have this material called nanites or whatever, and this is your universal ammunition, which can turn into bullets, rockets, and lasers.
Right.
How does that work? I don't know. But the point is that like I can see how they can change it so much that I wouldn't want it. But assuming that the same decision makers that are there now would remain there, yeah, I'd want a Factorio too.
Yeah.
Does that?
I think from a core level, it's like the snap gut response is like, well, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I? I do start to wonder, like from a design perspective, that's like, what could you do differently? Like there is something about Factorio and Space Age. I'm kind of taking Space Age a little bit off of this comment, because with Space Age, I feel like there's a lot you could do differently. In my opinion, like in my core canon, in my head canon, Space Age is a mod. It's not actually Factorio. Like Factorio is Factorio 2.0, and Space Age is a fun overhaul mod that the devs made on the side. It is not what I think of as Factorio. Unfortunately, the community at large thinks of Space Age as Factorio because it's the expansion, the official Steam expansion on the game. You pay for it, it's DLC, yada yada. But like in my head, Factorio 2.0 is Factorio. And from that is, aside from all these little like tweaks in the game engine, like there's lots of little things you could fix in the game engine that would, for example, make quality more modifiable. Like there's lots of those things, but those are tiny things in the scope of a whole game. Like it would change
Multi-threading.
Multi-threading, which would make things more performant, which would help with things like some of the things modders wanted because they're not performant in not multi. Anyway, my point though is, would it actually feel like a different game? What's different? You're still going to have belts. You're still going to have bots. You're still going to have buildings that make things out of other things. And what could you actually change? Could you make enough gameplay changes that's not just new content that feels like another overhaul mod to make it feel like a new game? And I think that's tricky because Factorio is kind of perfect. And I not literally perfect, but it's kind of perfect.
I think it's elemental. I wouldn't say perfect. I think it's very elementally what it is.
Yeah, it's like distilled factory.
Yeah.
And like, how do you have more of that?
Well, the answer is you pick a direction to expand in, and you expand in that direction. And
but how does that not just feel
but
like an overhaul mod for Factorio is kind of what I'm getting at.
It depends on the direction you go in. So, I mean, and that I don't know. I don't have an answer to. This is the kind of thing where, like, for me, it would be different logistics and more granular logistics.
Someone on Twitch, sorry, I have to interrupt. Someone on Twitch was like 3-lane belts. Yes, that's it changes everything.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it would feel crazy, but anyway, I digress.
But no, I mean, I can think of several ways, and these were things that I wanted to do in the Factorio engine that I could not. And like these were things that I mentioned that I wanted to do for Hidden Worlds that I think would be able to add in Zachtronics elements, for example, or
like black box, like you work inside the assembler kind of things.
Yes. Or not even inside the assembler. Not just that. Maybe put a plate on a belt that I don't mean a plate item, I mean a tray, a working surface where you then bring things in and they operate on it and then it moves down the belt again. Like the belt would turn on, bring it to the area, it would stop, it would do stuff to it, then the belt turns back on and it
Kind
keeps
of like
going.
the create mod in Minecraft. It has a lot of those types of
Oh, is
things
that what
where
that is?
there's
I've not played it.
items
But
move along
yeah.
on belts, and then you have like things that like stamp it and then like fill it with water and then like yada yada, like an
You basically just
actual
take
assembly
you
line.
make more of the game. You take more of you push the abstract point back, essentially. And
Interesting.
that's one direction you could go in. I'm not saying this is the direction to go in, but you asked what direction, and that
Sure.
is a direction to go in.
Yeah.
And so
No, I
being
like the
able to do
brainstorming.
so that sort of thing would be wonderful. And being able to have the engine robustly handle that would also be wonderful. It is also wildly unlikely. And it's
Yeah,
also not
yeah.
the only direction.
It's
Like,
all
what about Z
unlikely,
levels?
and this is just dream time. But I
Yeah.
was kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, Factorio feels, and again, there are lots of things that if we could tweak the game engine underlying current Factorio, that would be improvements. So if Factorio 2.0 was nothing but a new engine that did all the bells and whistles that we all dreamed of, even that might be worth making. And nothing else. Same sprites, same gameplay, same everything, but the engine is a million times more robust and multi-threaded. Like that would almost be good enough because of the mods that would enable being created. That if you were to make a mod to go along with that, that could be packaged as a new game by itself.
I think at that point, however, you're kind of getting into the business of making an engine more than you're making a game. And what I fear is the effect of it turning into something like RPG Maker. And then all of a sudden we get a spate of kind of semi-homogeneous, automation
Right.
games. But at the same time, I feel like as long as there is a core experience to be had,
Right.
then from which you can build, then that would be fine. How the heck-a-doodle ever? Why would there only have to be one? So, like right now, we have the engineer crash land on planet. There's many other contexts you can put this into, and people have like maybe you're terraforming, maybe you're solving an archaeological mystery, whatever. There's all sorts of other contexts that one could build, and that mods could then sort of extend from.
Right.
So in a sense, what they've done is they've built a game stub with vanilla. There's almost no context. Who is this character? Like I came up with a story about it, but that's just one story and obviously not canon. But what is the canon? Is there a canon?
Not
Like
really. No.
from what
That's
I've
kind of
talked
the
to the
point.
devs, it's basically a tabula rasa. It's a blank slate.
Yeah.
And so make enough of those, make different blank slates, and then
Sure.
let us with your new fabulously flexible engine that's still optimized and whatever. Let us build from there.
Would
And I
it
think
be
that could be a cool way to go.
should Factorio again, these are dream theoreticals, there's lots of right answers. Should
Pie in the
Factorio
sky.
2 be 3D?
Yes, God, please, yes. And I have very, very concrete reasons why.
Interesting. Well, we cannot time-wise get into all of those, but give us the like 3-sentence version of some of them.
The pipeline from 3D model to sprite that manifests in the game is a very convoluted, obnoxious, and no longer the it's a problem. It's not that fun. Making 3D assets that are seen from that far away that are nonetheless 3D can be done in the modern day on potate computers just fine. The
Yes.
bottleneck for your game running is not
Well, Captain of
the
Industry
3D
is a great
representation.
example of that. Captain of Industry has optimized the ever-living heck out of their game. They're fully 3D. It looks great. The game looks amazing. And they've optimized things so many times. And that is kind of a 3D... That's the closest thing to 3D Factorio that there is. I would argue Satisfactory is a completely different... Like, things aren't put together the same way. Captain of Industry is much more like Factorio in how belts and pipes are put together. It does have layers, though, like Dyson Sphere Program. Some would argue Dyson Sphere Program is closer to Factorio, but then you've got the spheres and the space. And I think Captain of Industry is a little closer, personally. Anyway, that is such a digression.
Yep. Well, I was
Moving
gonna say the
on.
last thing is you could still have the same gameplay just without, or like game camera stuff without having to change anything else.
Right,
So
right.
that was my third sentence. I was promised three, darn it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you.
Go ahead.
I think you had like
There's a
30, but
semicolon in
it's
there.
fine.
That was a
It was
semicolon.
a run on three sentences. It's fine.
Yes, awesome.
So the thing I wanted to end with is Kovarex's quote himself in the last FFF. Well, I think there might have been one after this, but it was the wrap up, the Space Age wrap up FFF, November 11th of 2024, almost a year ago. At the very end of the FFF, he said, "Okay, what after?" And he was like, "This is one of the most frequent questions I'm getting. Well, I'm not really sure, but we are playing with different kinds of ideas for the next game. Will we figure out something worth doing? Maybe. To clear my head and gather a little bit of inspiration, I decided to experience the fresh World of Warcraft world for a while." I assume this was like vanilla, relaunch type stuff or something like that. "You can find me in the fresh, blah, blah, blah. You can find me in the..." Apparently, there was a guild called the Factory Must Grow that he was in, which is really funny.
I joined that Discord, but they were playing Alliance, and I really didn't want. I hated vanilla Warcraft, even though I played a ton of it.
That's
so
funny.
I thought I was going to join, and then I looked at the buying a $15 subscription, and I was like,
Yeah. But then he said, "The game I'm thinking about is related to WoW in a similar way as to how Factorio is related to Minecraft." What?
"Yeah, the analogies on that sentence.
What does that mean?
That means I have a very, very clear thought in my head. No, that doesn't mean that. I'm sorry, that's a lie. It means that I am very inspired right now by something that I really, really want to do, and I think there is a connection here. But this is also the same motivation that gave us quality. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that this wasn't the most well thought out analogy as it was said. But that's okay because interviews are hard. They really
but
are.
we're here to hyperanalyze it, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay. All right, so go on.
So how is Factorio related to Minecraft? And did he mean modded Minecraft, aka the modded Minecraft that inspired Factorio, or did he mean vanilla Minecraft when he said this?
Yeah. There's no world in which he meant vanilla Minecraft.
Yeah, I think he meant like modded Minecraft, like Buildcraft or whatever, Terra Firma Craft, whichever. I think Industrial Craft. Which one was it that inspired Factorio? I think it was Industrial Craft.
I just want to be clear that on the scale from 1 to optimized, it's not 1 to optimized. It's Minecraft to Factorio. Minecraft is the least optimized game that I know of that is as popular as it is, right? If you were going to say an optimization to popularity ratio,
I think
wins
you'd
in
be
some
impressed.
way.
You'd be impressed at what GT&H can handle, how they've optimized it, given their constraints.
The rendering engine has been
it's bad.
Like people in their garages, in a cave with scraps, have made better engines than the Minecraft engine, hands down, by far, with multiplayer and wildly distant rendering. Anyways,
I don't think what he was talking about was optimization, though. Here,
I will not. I will settle down. Go ahead.
I doubt optimization. I'm talking about gameplay wise. So, because Factorio kind of here's my take. Factorio distilled the essence of automation that was the modded Minecraft that inspired Factorio, right? Because there wasn't, we've talked about this before, there kind of were no automation games before Factorio, like pure games that were like, hey, this is a game that distilled this gameplay element into its own genre.
But they weren't, exactly. They kind of existed as features of games.
Exactly. They were
management sims was the category prior.
Automation was always a subgenre at best. It was never the genre. So in WoW, what I'm thinking is what he's getting at is he's taking some element out of the experience of an MMORPG like WoW and distilling it into like, we've made a whole game out of we've made a whole genre out of this subgenre, and there's enough here to make it its own game. And I'm kind of just
what
like,
on earth could that possibly? Okay,
what could that be?
So the only thing I can think of is, are you talking about you've automated the sending out of adventurers? Is that like what is? What
no. I'm not saying automation.
Hold on. That's actually let me spitball for a second if I can. I don't want to take up too much time.
Well, first of all, there have been multiple idle games that automate sending out of adventures and collecting items, like Soda Dungeon and games like that. So there is some stuff in that category already where it's like a little bit of RTS, or not RTS, a little bit of RPG, a little bit of like, it's not quite automation. They're more idle games, but we've talked about how idle games and automation games have a lot of overlap, yada yada. But I was more thinking not an automation version of WoW, not automation from WoW. I'm saying like he took the automation element out of modded Minecraft and turned that into its own genre / game. I'm thinking, is there a subgenre inside of WoW, not intrinsically automation, that he's slicing out and making into an expanded whole game genre of its own?
I'd be curious. I'm very familiar with WoW. Like I know it.
Yeah, I played a lot of it back in the day. So like,
I don't know what aspect they'd be pulling.
Right, but I'm thinking like, what if it's some sort of RPG? I think it's got to be around itemization, right? Kovarex clearly loves the itemization, the blue, yellow, purple, orange colors of WoW, because that's what we got in Factorio.
Dopamine is a hell of a drug.
And so is there something about like, what if you were producing the items for adventurers? There are some games in that kind of direction, but they're like, you think about the potion making games, or there are games where you've been a blacksmith, but those are more shop management games than they are about production of the actual item, like Factorio style. So what if it was like a little bit of automation, but you are actually like dealing with, magical items and loot?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious, and I don't know. I mean, what is in his mind is a
yeah. This is
but
pure
like,
speculation.
I think there are like, and let me back up one more step a little bit. I hate to keep drawing it back to the thing I was working on, but I wanted to put NPCs in Factorio that could do things that you could talk with, and I even coded a dialogue thing for Factorio. If they were trying to go in that direction where they put in RPG elements to something that nonetheless was still, you're doing some kind of automation, except now it's with, instead of iron plates being fed to assemblers, it's, healing potions being fed to parties who are then going out and like slaying Zargblant, the dragon of time, or whatever. I don't know. Then sure, I'm down. I'd be curious to see what their take is, just because they tend to make really good decisions. So poor Zargblant, destroyer of time, should just definitely days are numbered. Their time travel back
I'm super interested, and like, this is all speculation, of course. His comment should not be taken as more than an idle thought at the end of a post. Like, all he said is, the game I'm thinking about, will we find something worth doing? Maybe. Like, so please don't take our speculation as like, this is what I'm not saying I think that's what's going to happen. It's just, I just wanted to expand and kind of bounce around some silly ideas on what he said, because I think it's interesting. I'm very curious, though, how far away, to kind of close out this episode, because we got to finish here. How far away are we from 2.1? Because it's been a year and we haven't heard bug squat from them about 2.1. So do you think they're just going to drop it on us like randomly one day? It's going to be like 2.1's out, or do you think we're going to get an announcement?
I have no idea. What I would love, so like, let's spitball what I would like. Can I do that?
Yeah.
I want Factorio Friday Facts back for a little while.
Aw,
that would be great. Like, literally, if I had the ability to, get people hyped up for it again. I mean, it's not going to be as big of a, I don't say hype train, but whatever, you know what I mean? It's not going to be as much hype as for Space Age. And yet, those peeks behind the curtains, they were great. And
they were,
I think would serve very well to sort of build up to a 2.1. So
the only question is 2.1 going to be enough to get hyped about for the average player? If it's just a bunch of tiny tweaks and a bunch of behind under the engine stuff that needed to be added and fixed, like, is that going to be enough to hype players for a whole new playthrough?
And is it enough to justify telling someone who's working on stuff to, now you have to drop a week to build up a Factorio Friday Facts? Because let's be clear, that ain't trivial. It is not trivial to make.
Yeah, especially with how they did them. That some of those were really time intensive facts that they posted. Some of them were more like, hey, I'm just gonna write 6 paragraphs about this
some
thing.
Of the authors as they were being written, and some of the stress levels that people were going through were just like, whoosh, dang.
So all that to say, I'd love a Friday Facts. I'd imagine, here's my prediction, because again, we're here to speculate, not say what we know, but say what we we think maybe could be.
We're not dropping truth bombs here.
Exactly. We're dropping speculation bombs. I think that they're going to do 1 to 2 Friday facts before 2.1. Because they've been quiet since they announced there would be a 2.1 on the Friday facts front. And they said they wanted to bug fix and put their heads down and work on 2.1. So I would find it a bit odd if they just ghost dropped it out of nowhere without like a Friday facts. I could see that they just drop the Friday facts with the patch, like at the same time. But I think they're going to give us a week or two in advance. But again, this is just speculation.
If I had to speculate, I would assume they would give us sort of like a halfway update on the Factorio Friday facts, and then like 1 or 2 right before. Like, I think they did that.
You don't even think they're halfway? That's a hell of a speculation to drop at the end of a 2-hour podcast. I think they're way closer than that.
Well, the reason I was saying it comes back to what I was saying earlier, in that we've been getting features from 2.1 drip fed to us already. So in terms of where's the goalpost and are we halfway to it, I'm not sure. But what I mean is, like, once they have a good idea of what those goalposts are and where they're drawing lines and such, I think then we'll probably get something. And then just before it drops, a couple of things just to get people playing the game again so they can get testing, because that's going to be a crucial part of the development process.
Right.
That one that they never issue. They always do it. So I think we'll get that. But that's my...
Okay. So now for the ultimate speculation then. We got to pick dates. And we're going to have a winner at some point.
God, are you kidding me right now?
I mean, it's for fun. It's for fun. I think we're clearly in different spaces on this. I actually think 2.1 is going to be out by Christmas.
Oh, no. Bob Barker, I am going, like, you have underbid. I would
okay, well, make your bid and we'll see who's closer. And this isn't Price is Right. It's who's closer, not like it.
I know. Oh, okay. Fine.
Not like I lose if it's on the 26th.
Okay, just so everyone knows, if the Price is Right rules are, if you have to guess the price of something in various contexts, and if you go over, you lose. But if you whoever's under by the least amount.
Yeah, it's not who's closest; it's who's closest on the underneath side. But we're going general closeness.
My guess is 6 months.
6 months from now, which would be April. Is that April? 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, it wouldn't be April 1st, would it? I want to
April 20th. We're on the 20th, so it's April 20th. Is your guess? 420. It's a perfect guess.
Oh my god. Fabulous.
You just 420'd the internet on accident. That's a good time. All right, great. So I say Christmas. You say 420. We'll see who wins. With that, we do have to end the podcast. This has been the longest episode thus far, and I've loved it. Galdoc, thank you so much for hanging out, as always.
Thank you for having me and letting me, like, therapy session with my mod status.
Oh, no, man, you're doing great. And just to end on that note, like, Hidden Worlds is such a huge project, and I love your vision for it, and whether it ends up existing or not, I'm proud of you for like how you handle designing it and working on it and streaming to your viewers and stuff. Like, I think you did a really great job with that. And, you know, like you were even saying this when we did the episode on Hidden Worlds, like you don't know for sure that this thing is ever going to see the light of day in the vision that you have it, but that's not why you set out to work on it and make it. So I think regardless of where things go, it has been and will be, if you keep working on it, a success in many of the metrics.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So anyway, to all you listeners, as always, first and third Monday, we plan to stream the podcast. So we'll be back on November 3rd, and you can check the Discord for any updates on that. And if you have any ideas, questions, or ideas for guests, let me know on the Krydania Discord, or let Galdoc know on his. There will be links to those in the description. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Always remember, the factory must grow.